Hey guys, what's up? I'm Erin and welcome back to the channel. Am I saving enough? I feel like this is a very common question that we ask ourselves. Am I saving enough to reach my goals today? Am I saving enough to reach my eventual long-term goals? Because so much hinges on what you can put away on a monthly basis, year in and year out, until you reach that final, well, I guess I can't really say final. It is a number that we're aiming for, but ultimately what we're aiming for is to build a robust portfolio, one that can maintain us in a state of financial freedom. And that's likely going to be a dynamic number. But our goal is to be able to sustain ourselves. And we all likely have a number in mind, a number that signals to us that, hey, I've made it. I've achieved my lofty goal. Well, before we can get into the recommended savings rates, a lot comes down to when you start saving and when you start investing. And when we break it down by generation, we see that each generation has been getting better at starting to save earlier and earlier. As it currently stands, the youngest generation, Gen Z, started investing at the age of 19. Millennials started investing at the age of 25. Gen X started on average investing at the age of 30, baby boomers at the age of 35, and if we simply look at all generations across the board, the average age for any one individual to begin investing is 31. It's probably common sense to say, but the younger the age or the earlier you start investing in taking away a portion of every single paycheck and putting that into investments, the less you need to actually save because you give yourself a longer investing time horizon. The longer you delay investing, the greater the percentage you're going to need to save in order to hit your goals. To answer the question of how much should I be saving, Fidelity offers up some benchmarks. If you start saving at the age of 25, assuming you have no savings or investments at this point, they recommend you save 15% of your income each and every single year going forward until the age of 67. If you start saving at the age of 30, they recommend a savings rate of 18%. And if you start saving at the age of 35, they recommend a savings rate of 23%. Now, here are the assumptions that Fidelity makes when looking at these calculations. They assume that you continue investing throughout all working years until the age of 67. They assume you're able to capture an annual wage growth increase of 1.5% on your income. They assume you're able to capture a 7% annual rate of return on your investments, and that inflation is around 2.5%. They also say that this calculation and these percentages will work for incomes from $50,000 a year all the way up to $300,000 a year, assuming you stop working at the age of 67. But because some people start saving at earlier ages and some people at later ages, I think it's important that we expand this data on both sides. So based on the information given and the ultimate numbers that Fidelity gets to, if you were to start investing at the age of 20, you could get away with investing just 11% of your income. And if you delayed investing until the age of 40 with the goal of still stepping away from the workforce at the age of 67, your investing target becomes more aggressive at a rate of 29%. Again, keep in mind that the whole premise behind these percentages based off age is that when you start investing, you're starting from scratch, that you have nothing invested. The wonderful news when it comes to these percentages is Fidelity says that you can absolutely include any employer match in your percentage of income saved. So if you have an employer who matches 3, 4, or 5% in an employer-sponsored retirement plan, you absolutely get to add this on top of your savings rate. Let's say you're 25 and you work for a wonderful employer who matches 5% on their company's 401k. So long as you start by saving 10% of your income, you're automatically going to hit this 15% recommendation by Fidelity just by including your employer match. So assuming you follow these percentage benchmarks based on the age at which you start saving, and then continue saving all the way up to the age of 67, at which point you retire, what is the ultimate benchmark that Fidelity says you're aiming for? Well, the often cited "how much should I have saved up for retirement" graphic from Fidelity is one which is based on having a certain multiple of income saved up at various ages, working our way up to 10 times your income saved and invested by the time you step away from the workforce at the age of 67. By the way, if you're interested in seeing how this number changes, if you're looking at retiring at, say, an earlier age or a later age, I did recently do a video on that, and I will link it down below if you're interested in checking it out. I do think this multiple of income graphic is useful as a tool to measure if you're on track for saving for your own retirement, but I think it's interesting and worth pointing out that if you hit Fidelity's savings benchmarks, if you start saving 15% of your income at 25, or 18% at 30, or 23% at 35. If you hit these savings thresholds at the respective starting age, you will surpass the recommended savings by a substantial amount by the target age of 67 in every single scenario. And these scenarios don't even factor in wage growth, which would result in increased savings over time. The reason I say it's amazing having these savings rates surpass even Fidelity's own benchmarks is that it means you're guaranteed to set yourself up for a very nice retirement. It also means that you're likely to give yourself options that perhaps maybe you could step away from the workforce earlier if you so choose. I think seeing figures like this is really encouraging because so often people feel like, oh, I didn't start saving until I was 30 or 35. And they feel like that there was such a delay in getting started that it's impossible to catch up. But the reality is, if you're looking at a more traditional retirement age, something in your 60s, you still have a lot of time to make a lot of headway. You can make a lot of headway in the course of, say, 30 years. And I think it's really encouraging to look at savings rates that are in the ballpark of, say, 11%, 15%, 18%, or even 23%. It might be getting a little aggressive to get in the ballpark of, say, 29%, but if you don't start saving until you're 40 and don't have anything in investments at that point, it just might be that you have to be more aggressive. But I feel like if you start at an early age and just put something away, no matter what the amount, my attitude is kind of like it's impossible to screw it up, assuming you just put something away. So you start early, leave that money invested, let compounding do its magic. Compounding will do the heavy lifting to grow this money over time, the less you actually have to do as far as your contributions. And there are absolutely ways to make building wealth easier, beyond simply starting at an earlier age. Because if we didn't start last year or a few years ago, we can't rewind the clock. You can make sure to take advantage of tax-advantaged accounts, which allow your money to grow either tax-free or tax-deferred, whether you're using a Roth or traditional account, respectively. You can make sure that you have a good asset mix, that you're not too conservative or not too aggressive. If you're starting at an older date, maybe I would recommend staying away from target date funds because they might be too conservative when it comes to allowing your portfolio to grow the necessary amount over the short time you have. If you got a later start to retirement or you're simply a super saver by nature, which I assume is a lot of people who watch this channel, once you hit the age of 50 or older, you can take advantage of catch-up contributions. The other suggestion I love that Fidelity makes is to take the 1% challenge. A high-level overview is that Fidelity suggests if you can increase your contributions to your investments by just 1%, that can translate to a 3% increase to your income from your investments in retirement. Of course, it does depend on when you start increasing your contributions, but it does show that it can have a big impact. And 1% is not a lot of money, so it should be fairly easy to do, and it's a nice challenge to kind of take on. The cool thing is that Fidelity actually has a simulator that you can run if you were to adjust your contributions by 1% or more, so let's actually check it out. See how small changes can make a big difference. My name is Erin. I am 37 years old. I make, let's just say it's a household income of $100,000 a year. Looks better with a comma. In the future, I'll have more time for travel. Let's just be normal. Okay, so if I save 1% more, which is less than $20 a week, seems very reasonable. By the time I retire at the age of 67, I could have an additional $154,000 for travel. If I could bring that up to 3%, it'd be a little less than $500,000 It's about $60 a week, so that's a little less doable. What about a 5% increase? That's almost $770,000. That's a huge difference. Again, getting to $97 a week or almost $100 a week might be a stretch for many, but I like that they have this tool that you can play with. So I think if you can target to increase your savings rate by 1%, that can make a really big difference. And sometimes seeing these numbers gives you more of a motivation to do that kind of thing. Now, for the vast majority of people, I think these savings thresholds are very reasonable and very realistic, because the fact of the matter is most people are going to retire in their 60s or near 70. But for some of those who watch my channel, they are interested in the FIRE movement and they are aggressive super savers and they want to reach financial independence as quickly as possible. So if that's you, there's this really awesome table that was put out there by one of the OGs of the FIRE movement, Mr. Money Mustache, which breaks down how quickly you can reach financial freedom based on various savings rates from conservative to aggressive. Starting with a savings rate of just 5%, he suggests that it would take you about 66 years to reach financial freedom. Or on the other extreme end, if you can find a way to save 70% or more of your income, you could reach financial freedom in less than a decade. Now, in no way am I suggesting that everyone should be saving as aggressively as possible and aiming to save 70% or more of their income. The goal of your life should be to have an amazing life today, to spend on things you enjoy today, but also make sure that you're setting aside something for your future so you have an amazing future. You want to check both boxes. Both Fidelity and Mr. Money Mustache assume that when you start saving and investing, you're starting from a point of zero, that you have nothing in investments. But let's say you're at a point where you may have a substantial sum in investments. At that point, you're trying to figure out how much you should continue saving. Well, you might need something that's a little more personal to you. For that, there's a really awesome calculator from Networthify where you can type in your data and it will spit out how much you need to save in order to reach your savings and investment target. This is one of my favorite calculators to play with, so I will link it down below if you're interested in checking it out. The best general rule of thumb is the earlier you start saving and investing, the lesser the percentage you can get away with and still hit your goals. The later you start, the more aggressive you're going to have to be. What's your savings target? Would you be willing to share your percentage down below? I post new videos every single week. If you got anything at all out of this one, please give it a like. If you're new here, please consider subscribing, or if you know of someone who might get something out of this type of content, please consider sharing. I'll see you soon. Bye. Change based on workers' wages over time. Say that 3 times fast. Okay. Did a video on already and I take a deeper dive. I don't know. Let's lose. Oh geez, it is. I did not get enough sleep last night. I am like dying here. I am dragging and I don't even know what is coming out of my mouth.